All right, here we go. All right, hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Eric Trant. This is Outer Snail Productions. Right now it's a monthly podcast, a couple beers. This month we have Paco Rodriguez with us. I've got a little bit of notes here. Paco grew up near Miami, Florida. Was drafted. He's a ball player. Was drafted out of high school by the Astros, but chose to go to the University of Florida instead. Played as a Gator. And actually found this on Wikipedia. Career ERA earned run average at Florida, 2.19 in 86 appearances, the lowest since the introduction of aluminum bats. That's pretty badass, dude.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
He's sitting there next to me. It's like, is that still legit? I mean, that's a good stat, man. All SEC in 2012 and led the Gators to College World Series 3 years in a row. Selected by the Dodgers in 2012 in the second round. And at the time, draft experts predicted that he would be the first minor leaguer from that class to get up to the major leagues. And they were right. You were. That's pretty badass as well. And now currently working as a sports agent, developing that career, and owns a youth baseball club here in Arizona, the Arizona Aces. So Paco, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
It's good to see you, man. Thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm excited to talk to you because I've overheard some stuff that you've been telling the parents and everything about just what's going on with the college players and player development and all the different NIL things that are going on. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. So, but first, as always,
cheers.
Cheers. Drinking some Modelo Negra. So why don't we just dive into that? Because I do want to spend some time, near the end, if we have time, just talking about, more of your background, some of your time playing ball. I have some other questions around that I'm interested in hearing about. But first off, I think a lot of people would be interested in just hearing, what are your insights on, I don't know anything about all this, the name, image, likeness stuff, the NIL. So as far as what that is, name, image, and likeness for kids going into college athletics.
Yeah. So basically, through the agent side of things, it's become such an important development aspect for players as a whole, going into college, and just the understanding that social media is a platform that you can use in a positive way to kind of build your name, likeness, and of course your image on how you want to develop just your overall understanding of what people think of you, and at the end of the day, I think it's something that as we've gone along now, within the past couple of years, it's really become an emphasis on how players are being viewed at the end of the day. Like if I'm as a recruiter, for my company, MVP Sports Group, we go on their Instagram, we check them out and see what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, what they're posting about, just their whole entire demeanor of how they carry themselves, on and off the field per se. Like that's something that is extremely important to us. And on the professional side, same thing. Those guys are doing their homework and they're really paying attention to that aspect.
So, okay, I want to go back to so even when you say you're going on their Instagram, are you talking about like high school level age kids? You're starting there as far as looking at what their social media presence is like?
So just on the recruiting aspect of it, like we start doing our homework, freshman, sophomore year, at least on the agent side of
high
things.
school?
Yeah, of high school. We start paying attention to players, knowing that there's rankings or scouts that are paying attention to these kids. It's not a heavy dose, but it's something that us as agents, we want to beat everybody to the punch. So we want to make sure that we're seeing how they're carrying themselves on a day-to-day basis. That's the most important part for us as agents, is we want to get the right guys understanding, within work ethic, within how they carry themselves, how they treat their families, and everything to that extent is being presented to us, right? So the social media aspect of it is just another way for us to make a decision on a player when it's time to go recruit this player and try to do our part to sign him to our agency as a whole.
So it's interesting because, like my kids, we've been trying to limit their social media presence, especially their mom. Like their mom, she's been really great with that. Really, preventing them from getting into that. So now going, for is that something that would hinder, like let's say you've got a kid who's got some potential in high school, if they haven't established a social media presence, is that going to prevent them from being noticed? Like, is it something that if they aspire to play in college or to eventually maybe play professionally, do they need to start doing that freshman, sophomore year of high school?
I wouldn't say that it's necessary. Like there's scouts that are going to be out at your games. You know, that's the reality of it. But when it puts you in a position to, let's say that there's a college that's really interested in your kid, right? Let's say Sean is in a position to go to, let's just put an SEC school, the University of Florida, because I went there, correct?
Yeah.
And there's another player just like Sean that is in the same position, has the same skill sets, is building himself up to be the same type of player, right? As a coach, understanding the program, understanding what we're trying to accomplish, nowadays, it's another tool that these kids have to go into a program and say, hey, I want to go to University of Florida, and these coaches are more interested because you do have maybe 15,000 followers rather than just 1,500, right? Because at the end of the day, you're going to get more views within your program to develop the following and develop the views that you're getting on a consistent basis within that program itself, right? And that's something that people look into nowadays, so which is, it's crazy to think about, but it is important because at the end of the day, it's putting players and organizations in a position where it's like, hey, we might not get as much out of this player, but because of his likeness, good or bad viewing is still viewing
So
to the game. You know,
so
and it's crazy to think about, but it's important.
so you're saying that have you seen that actually occurring, or there's a possibility that a D1 program may choose a player of a little bit lesser performance, but because they've got a greater social media presence, they may choose them over the.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Interesting.
and I think the best example that I can give you where this started to trend was when Tim Tebow got signed by the Mets and started and played for the Mets. And at the end of the day, what you think about it, he was an older guy, somebody that hasn't played in, you know, X amount of years. I'm pretty sure it was, you know, 7 or 8 years that he had not played organized baseball. But because of his likeness, because of his image, they took a chance on him and said, hey, we'll allow you to maneuver your way around the minor leagues, see if you can make something out of it. But at the end of the day, they knew that they were going to get tickets sold in every stadium that they went to, because at the end of the day, it was Tim Tebow that was a part of the organization. You know, regardless of his skill set, there was interest outside of his skill set on the field.
Yeah, because because their main goal is to play games and win, but at the same time, they're also like selling tickets, they're selling merchandise, they're getting TV, TV rights and broadcast rights and everything. I was going to ask you to sit a little bit closer this way. Sorry. I was just checking where we were on the frame. There we go.
Absolutely. Yep,
so, okay. Thanks, man. So, okay. So I want to go back. This name, image, and likeness, the NIL, this is all something that's very new.
Yeah.
Because prior to, like, what was it? Like when you were going through this, there was no, there were all these rules as far as maintaining amateurism for collegiate athletes. And so, like, can you compare, like, what was it like when you were going through the process, playing ball, coming out of high school, getting drafted or being noticed by the player or by the teams, choosing a school? How is it different back then versus it is now with just the NIL regulations, or with the ability of the players to actually make money
of the NIL? So the difference between it now and then was, back then we did get recognized. There was players, everybody knew that there was certain players that were going to create, some type of career for themselves or something along those lines. You had all the scouts, you had all the front office that were checking up on players. The information was there, but it was less public because of the social media aspect of it. Right, so it stayed within the organizations. It stayed within baseball. Nowadays, everything is so expanded with social media that there is a emphasis on the social media aspect of it. You look at every department now within the college side of the game and the pro side of the game that is strictly developing the image and likeness of their organization as a whole, and at the same time trying to help their players grow within within the organization as a whole and within their image and likeness, right? You look at Ellie De La Cruz, for example.
Uh-huh.
Ellie De La Cruz has been brought up as one of the sensations of the game, which he is, but they've really emphasized on the specifics of him and his skill sets, right? So you look at all of the videos that have gone viral for Ellie De La Cruz.
Right.
They have really emphasized on that side of it, and he has a team potentially that is helping him within the social media side, because at the end of the day, he wants to have all the views, right? Because now on the negotiation sides, when he gets to the point that he gets past arbitration and the team is ready to make a commitment to him, that's a part of the negotiations. Hey, look at my image and likeness. I'm one of the highest viewed baseball players in the world at this point. So for me, I know that I deserve a little bit more money because of that simple fact.
It's bringing more people it's just more marketing for the team and for
more marketing for everybody that's involved within the deal. So that's why the image and likeness is so important within the course of a kid's career nowadays, which is something that we try to keep away because of all the bad that's in social media, and the negative things that it can create. But at the same time, it's something that is important. If it's ran by the parents, it's ran a certain way. You wanna establish, the likings between those companies, where it's Rawlings, Easton, Louisville, or any of those, if we're playing baseball, because the reality is it's going to put them in a position where the kid's name is known, coming up through the ranks, making something out of his career that potentially is draft eligible out of high school. And because of that, and because of the image that he's created for himself, he has a little bit more leverage to make a little bit more money because of it.
That's interesting because, so it just reminded me, my brother, his son, my nephew Caleb plays hockey in Minnesota, and they were just in the state championship game. And it was broadcast on like local network television. And they lost in overtime. It was a freak goal where it was like the kid just happened to, it was like a Hail Mary pass. And it just like skated over the puck, just popped over the goalie's skate, like as he closed the gap. And he couldn't have done it again if he tried a million times. And then Aaron was here like a week later, and I overheard him having a conversation with the goalie's mom, and she was saying like people, like adults, were trolling her son for not closing the gap. On social media. And this is a 17-year-old kid. And so it's like it is it's interesting to think about, like, if this is starting, and I can understand it, if it's starting to become, if you are an athlete that has some potential to play in college or eventually professionally, getting started on making a name for yourself, but then it's like, how do you balance people being assholes?
And to me, that's the hardest part, because at the end of the day, we try to protect our kids on a day-to-day basis from all that negativity, and there's so much more negativity because of the fact that everything is exposed on social media. So so for me, that's the difficult part. There's some parents that don't want their kids to get exposed to that too early, right? Where they're questioning themselves about everything they do, right? Because at the end of the day, we're trying to develop the minds of our kids. But at the same time, if you do it the right way and you keep your kid away from it potentially until he's old enough to understand it, you're putting him in a better position. Because like anything else, somebody's going to go on social media and say, hey, you were really bad today, or why the hell did you do that? Or, just the typical negativity that you see, and you see it every day within social media of baseball players, as a whole, from when we're doing our homework on our guys. And the reality is that if there's a way to, of course, expose those people that are doing that, and then at the same time try to navigate social media platform to take away all those negative comments or anything to that extent, it's going to put them in a better position, But I think if you do it the right way, it's going to translate to them growing within the platform.
It almost seems like, so because I can understand the benefit, and it almost seems like the social media companies, there's an opportunity for them there, because unless I've thought for a long time that part of the reason why it's so easy for people to be, and I don't care if you cuss, this is my channel, assholes and say whatever the fuck they want is because there's anonymity online.
Mhm.
Like they don't have to put their name or their true face, their
Yep.
picture or their real name out there, so they can say whatever the hell they want because they're cowards and they
Yep.
can do it behind the anonymity. Whereas unless we solve that problem, you're going to have people just being dicks.
Mhm.
And so it almost seems like there's a opportunity for social media companies to be like, here's a corner of our platform that's dedicated to like student athletes
Mhm.
or people who are like where it's way more moderated. Maybe
Yes.
it's like you're not allowed to have comments
Yes.
on it. Like for
And
these,
and you can do that nowadays within just Instagram. There's how, let's say you go like a picture of somebody and you can write a comment. Nowadays you can eliminate that and people can't write comments, good, bad, or indifferent. They
oh, you
can't
can
write
just turn it off.
You just turn it off completely. So there's now I know that those platforms are doing that on purpose just to keep it to me and not worry about anybody else and what people have to say or not have to say or whatnot. So I know that that's a capability now, and I think that's important, especially for the youth side and going into the amateur side, because at the end of the day, you don't need any of the negativity, and that's
so that would be interesting too, as far as. And I wanted to talk to you later about just the company that you're working with
Yes.
as an agent, but you guys could offer that as a service, like even just here, we will help guide you as a parent and as a young player.
Mhm.
Here's how, provide that guidance and how they can develop their presence online to meet some of the goals, like, hey, here, once a week or every couple weeks, post some of your highlights from the last couple games and, do this, this, and this to avoid the trolls.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Just give some guidance out there for these families.
And we have people that we're working with at this point in time that help student athletes understand how to maneuver their way through social media platform. Like that's what we want for these young athletes. It's to understand how to post, how to interact with people, and just make sure that they're putting themselves in a position that, let's say I'm just going to put Bass Pro Shop because I thought about it. But if I like Bass Pro Shop, I want to get involved with Bass Pro Shop. I want to tag them on, let's say, all the fishing stuff that I have bought for myself throughout the course of the year. If I go fishing with my family and friends, I post about that fact, right? And at the end of the day, if you do it a certain way, it's going to put you in a position where you can eventually get a NIL deal in college because of the fact that you put your time and effort to grow this relationship with those companies,
Right.
and to me, that's how you can use a platform to develop these positive relationships with people and put you in a position to make money off the field as well, because at the end of the day, we talk about it all the time. I'll make a bunch of money on the field, but what am I going to do off the field, and how am I going to educate myself enough off the field?
Yeah, it's like
within-
Jordan was making like hundreds of millions just with his Nike deals and versus what he's making playing for the Bulls.
And nowadays there's more exposure to it all.
Yeah.
So it's giving more players the opportunity to make some money. It might not be the Michael Jordan money, but it's money where you can pay for your off-season stuff, let's say, while you're going through your baseball journey, And at the end of the day, the minor leagues is a hard journey and people don't recognize that as a whole. But if you have a little bit of money that you're making off of your social media, it puts you in a better place,
Right.
So
also too, so I know as I was doing some of the research on GPT, and again, GPT is freaking amazing, because I was just typing in like, hey, tell me about the NIL deals in this recent class action lawsuit that I've been hearing about. And so it started out where with opening up and allowing collegiate athletes to earn money off endorsements through their NIL, the whole NIL regulations. Now this recent class action lawsuit is related to, it's basically allowing universities, if they opt into the regulations, to actually just directly pay the players themselves.
Yes.
And so have you, with the few players that you've been working with so far, have you started to navigate that as far as like ASU, I'm going to assume, is going to opt in, the D1 school, they themselves will have budget available to cut a check to their players. So can you just explain that more to me? Like how is that, the fact that it's not even money that they're making through their social media. They're actually just by the fact that they have certain
Yes.
certain following. Now the university is going to be paying them as
Yeah.
well, right? So have you dealt with that at all?
Not yet, because I'm the guys that I'm representing right now on the high school side. But as an agency, you know, we do have players that are in college right now that are
Uh-huh.
going through that process, right? And you look at all the negotiations behind the NIL side to what the school is potentially going to pay you, you know, to come to campus and play for them at the end of the day. Because now it is pretty much a job. You know, we're just using the NIL slogan to basically put that onto the players as you're pretty much a professional to the extent nowadays, right? So
Right.
what's happening is that NCAA is saying, okay, hey, we're gonna have a budget within the whole within all of the NCAA that is going to allow players to make some money, right? And whether it's the baseball side, football side, men or women, doesn't matter. You're gonna make X amount of money, X amount of dollars, depending on your potential performance or what you did last year or whatever the way that the school is going to break it down to that extent, right? But you think about it, um, it's it's going to be budgeted out within all of the NCAA, right? To the extent. So let's say I'm just going to put a number. Hey, let's say the average freshman makes $50,000, right? They're going to pay him
Or
$50,000.
the school themselves
The
are going to
school
pay them
themselves is
50
going to pay him
grand.
$50,000. Anything outside of that, right? Let's say there's let's put a barbecue place. For example, I'm trying to think, just let's say a barbecue place, a local barbecue place wants to represent this player. Now he'll be able to make, hey, we'll give you another 10 grand for the year to make a couple of posts on Instagram and make a commercial or something to that extent, right? Through the school.
On top of what the school,
On top of what the school's already going to pay you to play baseball this year, potentially.
So prior to that, I mean, the NIL, when that was opening up, that was basically what that allowed, right? You had you could, you know, it's like you saw some of the college players on Dr. Pepper commercials and
Yes.
shit this last year.
Yeah.
But now they're saying once this whole lawsuit gets finalized, because I think it's still in the whole.
Yeah, it's a wild,
negotiating-
wild west. We call it the wild, wild west right now
Yeah.
because it depends on the school right now how much money they want to invest in the players.
Right. So every school's going to have a different budget that they decide up to a cap of like 20.5 million
Yeah.
annually per school. That's a shit ton of money.
Yeah, it's a
to be
lot.
paying your players. I mean, across all of their
All sports. Yeah,
Across
but it's
all
still a lot
sports.
of money.
It's still a lot of
It's
money.
still a lot of money.
Because it's really going to be focused on basically football, basketball, and then some
Everything
baseball,
else
track,
behind it, yeah,
everything
you know,
else behind
yeah.
those main ones. But that's still 20.5 million a year
Mhm.
to pay your players. That's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
So what? As I've been, I didn't do more research on this, but I have heard a little bit as far as like it is affecting though. Do you have you? I guess what are some of the impacts that you've seen, or are you familiar with? Like I've heard that now it's completely eliminated all walk-on prospects for
Yes.
schools that opt in.
Yeah, so now the rosters on the baseball side
Yeah.
have been minimized, and the whole walk-on aspect of it is getting pretty much eliminated. You still can,
Yeah.
but the reality is you have 34 scholarships. Kids are going to come in, they're going to play baseball, and they're going to get paid X amount of dollars within it all.
So why do you? I mean, I've been like sitting there thinking about like what's the rationale behind like eliminating walk-ons if you opt into this thing? Can you do you have any insight into that? Like, why would they decide? I don't understand that. Like, why eliminate walk-on opportunities if you're going to allow? It's like the school opts in. As a result, they have to reduce their rosters and also eliminate it's only scholarship players. Like, do you have any?
If I'm looking at it from the outside in, you think about it, we're investing so much money into these players. I'm not going to worry about the walk-ons anymore because of the simple fact that I am paying these guys to perform at the end of the day. So they're minimizing the rosters. They're saying, hey, if you come to school here, you're going to play, and we're paying you to play. So it's helping schools be able to budget out their money a certain way and give it to the best players potentially that are within the country. You know, like at the end of the day, that's how they're putting it all together is we need to minimize the roster sizes for the simple fact that it's going to the players that are coming on campus are going to play. Like that's what it is. And for me, it's not fair to the kids like the Wyatt Lamfords of the world, where he was a walk on, worked his way up to becoming top 5 pick in the draft.
Right.
And at the end of the day, he didn't have opportunity, before going to the University of Florida as a walk on, right? So that what's happening now is that you're basically eliminating these roster spots. But now the smaller schools are getting more opportunity to recruit better players as a whole, because they know it's a stepping stone, right? So if I look at, like, I'm going to look at the UCFs of the world, I'm going to look at the Florida Gulf Coast, right? That they're smaller D1 schools, but now these schools are basically recruiting and saying, hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars to come to school here. You're going to play as a freshman, right? You're not going to sit around. You're going to get your reps in, and from there you'll go into the portal and you'll be able to go to a top tier program in the SEC, and it's going to help you. You're going to get your development per se, right? That's how some schools are approaching the recruiting side of things.
That was the one, as I was just like thinking about it, that
Yeah.
made sense to me by reducing the roster. And even though I always thought that the walk-on thing was just a moonshot to begin with. Like, no, I don't think anyone would go to school thinking they're going to actually walk on and be a star.
Yeah.
Right. So, but by reducing the rosters, then it does. It basically allows, it's kind of like the same thing with like the Yankees versus the Padres. You can't have one school that's got a ton of money just grab all of the best players.
Yes.
Right. It does force the best players to get spread
to
around.
be distributed a little
even,
bit. Yeah.
Level the playing field.
Yes.
And all the, so, hey, man, maybe Illinois will have a good football
Yeah,
team
absolutely.
coming.
And you look at it and you look at that standpoint, and it's just giving more schools more opportunity to recruit better players, right? So they're trying to figure out how to navigate the money aspect of it to be able to put a competitive environment within not just the SEC, because the SEC has been dominating sports for the past 10 years or so.
Yeah.
But they're trying to be able to distribute it between everybody and give everybody a fair shot, which is, for me, the best thing for the sport of baseball, or for football, or for basketball, or for whatever sports you want to put out there, because it is going to make it a little bit more fair as a whole. So the minimizing to be able to distribute players to having these smaller schools develop players as a whole is giving everybody a fair chance to be competitive year in, year out. And I think that's what they're trying to balance out right now.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense, because it's the same as like within the salary cap requirements on any of the professional leagues. It's the same type of approach.
Yeah.
Where it does allow some of the smaller teams, smaller schools in this case, to actually attract talent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So one of the as far as like, as I was doing some of the research, they were talking about, because this is all so new.
Yeah.
It's just in the last 4 or 5 years.
5 years,
really?
yeah. You think
5
about it, not
years.
even. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like you said, it's the Wild West.
Yeah.
So like, what are some of the things, just either, as you've been starting to understand, what are the opportunities out there? Like, where are some of the pitfalls? Like, where do you see, because there's not a whole, besides the fact that like the schools with their NIL budgets are capped, like we were just talking about. There's not a whole lot of regulation as far as like how, or really anything. So what are you worried about as an agent? Like, what do you see? How are you going to guide some of these young players to avoid getting like trapped in poor contracts, or what are some of the pitfalls that you see?
I think so. That's a good one for me, just because we're learning as we go. Like, we're all learning. It's not like it's been around long enough for me to understand it to an extent, or for the agency as a whole. It's we're all learning as we go along. But if I'm guiding a player, right, like I rather some of our players potentially go to a smaller school early and get their reps in on purpose, for the simple fact that they're gonna get it's actually necessary. We talk about all the time on the development side, right? Some kids have the potential to go to a big time school, but are they gonna get the reps that they need that year to be able to develop? If you look at the negative side of it, he goes, he doesn't perform early, doesn't get the opportunity he needs. He sits around for a whole year
Right.
or for half a year, and now he's lost. Let's say on the pitching side, he's lost 25 innings where it's his development right, at the end of the day, right? So you're looking at that side of things, and it's going to make it extremely difficult because, like anything else, you have all these coaches that need to win, right? To keep their jobs, you got to win. Like that's the reality of the game. But it puts players in a position where now they don't play. Now I go into the transfer portal. I got to go to a JUCO, right?
To get
the
time.
To get their time, or because think about it, now roster spots have to be delivered at a certain point, right? So at the end of the day, you're going into the fall, right? You have your roster for what it is, but you have to say, hey, these are my 30 guys that I'm going with potentially, right? And let's say 4 kids are left out, or they get released because that's what it is. You tell them to go into the transfer portal. You're not good enough to play here, but you have teams that are already filled up as a whole. So now what happens is you look at the portal aspect of it in certain times of the year is going to be very difficult to get into where you need to go. So now you have to go to a JUCO. You have to wait another 6 months, and now next thing you know, you're going to go to a smaller school potentially if you want your reps, or you're going to take a risk once again after not getting the development that you need to try to go back to a Power 5 school. And if you go there again and you don't perform, now you don't get your reps again, right? So there's a lot of maneuvering and a lot of ways of approaching what is necessary at the end of the day for these players to get what they need, which is reps at the end of the day.
It's interesting how those two things kind of I feel like they're related, but they're separate. You had this goes back to like Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when they were first starting to open up the transfer portal approach, because it used to be, you'd commit to a school and you're pretty much stuck there.
Yeah.
Right. And then what was it, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, they started saying, no, okay, you can go ahead and move to a different school. If you're not playing, you can go ahead and transfer to a different school.
Yeah.
And the NCAA allowed that. And so now that transfer portal process now then allows, it kind of supplements or complements all of the NIL deals as well, right? Because it's like you were saying, it does make sense. Like if you've got a player who's got some potential but isn't one of the top players, you say, hey, you can always develop yourself, get into the transfer portal, move into one of the bigger schools and be making more money. These smaller schools, they're looking for players. We've got, the bigger schools aren't grabbing all the big ones. So it's interesting how those two things start to like complement each other as far as giving players more opportunity to get out and play and to actually like have an opportunity to make something of their
So it's all intertwining right now, and I think that's the biggest thing is if you take the right approach and you're level headed to the process as a normal, as a Sean of the world. If Sean is in a position where he has the ability to put himself in a spot where he can go to college and play sports, and he does everything the right way, he's going to be better off because of the simple fact that he went about the NIL side the right way. And at the end of the day, he has a better shot. Like you're looking at every edge that you can get nowadays. And to me, the name, image, and likeness is extremely important as a player, because a school that is potentially looking for a piece, and let's say the Floridas of the world are looking for a 4th outfielder, right? And Sean is in a position where, hey, he has the ability to go play there, potentially earn his spot to play at an SEC school if somebody goes down, knowing that he's coming from a smaller school and has the image and likeness that is necessary for him to grow and for the school to get what they need out of it. It puts him in a more attractive setting because of that simple fact.
Do you see, especially with the reduced rosters at the bigger schools, it seems to me like, are we getting to the point where if you don't have a strong social media presence, you have no opportunity? Unless you're just like...
It's a lesser opportunity for sure.
You have to be a stud. Absolute stud.
Yeah, you have to be an absolute stud. And if you have... And you look at the people that are in the middle, at the end of the day, it is a way to negotiate at the end of the day and make an extra $10,000 or $15,000 as a sophomore coming from a small D1 school, because at the end of the day, you have more followings within it all. You know, like at the end of the day, it is what it is.
Or I mean, even not even from just the financial aspect, just
Mhm.
from being looked at. It seems like
Yes, absolutely.
it's
Yes,
like
yes.
if you don't have that, there will be enough kids who do.
Hmm.
And like we were saying earlier, like if for whatever reason, maybe because they're funny,
Mhm.
you know, or they're just like good looking kid or
Mhm.
whatever, they've got a large following. A university may decide to bring them in, even with the reduced roster,
Mhm.
maybe decide to bring them in because it will help their NIL money dollars
But it'll help them get more views as a
as a
school.
university,
So
right?
at the end of the day, if that kid does have 1 million followers per se, that school's getting 1 million follows
Right.
through this one player. And
So
at the end of the day, it is what it is. He might
yeah,
not be the greatest player in the world, but the school's getting what they need to be able to recruit more players in the future because they're getting more and more followings
yeah.
behind that.
So I mean, I can see it where it's unless you're just like we were saying, an absolute stud, you pretty much have to have some online presence
Yes.
because it's going to end up being where they're like they'll choose a kid who has a decent online following, but maybe not be as good.
Mhm.
They will choose a kid.
And
That's
that's
interesting.
what it is nowadays.
So how do you feel about that? It seems
It's
I mean,
tough.
It is tough because it's like
Because if I was once put in those shoes, I'm not a social media guy.
I'm not either.
I don't pay attention to it much, but it's a part of my job where sometimes I have to go look at the Instagram pages. I want to see what they're doing. I want to see the articles that are on these players. I want to do all these things that are social media based.
Yeah.
It's what it is. You know, and it's something that if I was once in those shoes nowadays, I would have been, a couple of $1 million in within my college career as a player, and at the same time, if I would have had that type of money, and I can pay somebody to run my social media, knowing that I don't like it, I would have put myself in a better position going
Yeah.
into the draft because of my social media. If I would have been that type of player, $2.5 million player, I think it was my numbers. If I look back at them, and
So
then
if you put your numbers in to today's
I'm
environment,
making a lot of money.
coming out of school, you would have been
I'm
2.5 million.
to just about.
Yeah.
I would have been close to that for sure. And I look at that and I look at the ability of being able to have a team built around me that was going to help me within the social media side, within the management side, within everything going into pro ball, because that's the biggest difference is going into that phase of my life where I didn't have anybody to really help me, guide me, and put me in a position where I knew what I needed to do. I was well prepared thanks to my coaches, but nowadays there's kids that are going into a junior year with a team because they're making $500,000-$600,000 a year.
So I think that alludes to what I wanted to talk to you about. So when you say you would have come out of school as $2.5 million player, or like these kids who are making, 300-400 million or 300-400,000 a year, that's all just through their endorsement money through the NIL?
Through school. Right
Or the
now, it's
school.
just through school. You look at the numbers. There's kids that are making as a sophomore or junior in college that are making 300, 500, 800. They're making a lot of money just within what the school's paying them to come and perform.
So is that are you talking about prior to this whole class action suit that where the school is paying them directly? It's just the school is opening opportunities for them to. So you would have 2.5 million coming in through endorsements of local
Through the
businesses?
local, through the school,
Okay.
and through the local. Just for what they were willing to pay as a whole for this player.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's before even all of this recent.
This is before all of
NCAA.
Yes.
So that's not the school actually cutting you checks. That's just all the money you're making through all the endorsements and bringing
through all
them.
yes.
And
yes,
now
what they're
on
willing to
top
pay.
of that,
Mhm.
with this House versus NCAA settlement, now the school itself is going to be cutting you a check on
Yes.
top of any of that stuff.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely makes sense. There's a really great South Park clip
Mhm.
about how like prior to this, it was like the South Park is basically saying, hey, up until that point, the schools are basically treating their student athletes as slaves. Like they're making money off of these kids.
Yeah.
And for nothing. The kids are getting out. Yeah, go ahead. So definitely, I think as far as like, it's a little unsettling because, you want you want your kids to like enjoy playing,
Yes.
right? And you hope that they're playing because they enjoy playing the game, and not just because they're like, oh, I can make a lot of money doing this.
Mhm.
Right now, I think it's naive to think that that doesn't also come into anyone's mind. Like, hey, if I'm good, I can make money
Mhm.
playing this game. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But at the same time, it's like, it is a little unsettling, all this money getting thrown at college athletes, but at the same time, they are generating a lot of value for
Mhm.
the university. So it does make sense. I think it's a good thing that they've reduced these restrictions and allowed them to make this
Yeah.
money. Because it is, they're bringing value to the universities, and they should be compensated for their time. Especially when you have a situation where it's like they can get injured.
Yeah.
They can get injured playing college.
And that's some another part of the conversation that we can eventually, we're gonna get into, because I know that's something that we had discussed. But within everything that the university is trying to accomplish, right, with paying players and giving them and providing value for them, at the same time, now there's schools that are taking that initiative and saying, hey, yeah, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars, and at the same time, we're going to pay an insurance to protect your body. Because at the end of the day, my freshman year, I made $50,000. I can get a policy in my sophomore year that's going to pay me for what I'm projected to make this year, right? So this is now going into that next conversation when it comes to the insurance side of things. Now schools are taking that initiative and working with companies that are protecting players as a whole, right? So if, let's say, there's a kid that's going to make $300,000, he can get a policy that's going to protect him for $300,000. So if he does get hurt, he gets paid for the money that he deserves to get paid for, because that was his initial contract, right?
So who's paying the premiums on that? Is the school paying
the school's going to pay the premiums, or the sponsors behind it all. That's where the regulations are going to come into play, because right now it is a wild west, and it's whoever is willing to pay for it, because it's the name, image, and likeness aspect of it. So there's no regulations to that, which is what they're trying to figure out right now, and that's what you had seen, through the online platform.
Right. And so that does allude to what I want to talk about. So like, I think it was like back in the fall during one of the ACES tournaments, in between games, I overheard you talking to some of the parents as far as just what you were seeing. So because this has all been opened up and allowing young athletes to be making money, there's now you have both the insurance industry as well as financial services industries getting involved in terms of, and so what I as far as the research that I was doing, one of the models basically it was saying that there's a model that involves investors providing athletes with cash up front, basically like investing in their future earnings potential.
Yes.
Right. And so either through their compensation as a player or through their compensation and the money that they're making through the NIL stuff, right? So, and I was sitting off to the side and I heard you talking to some of the parents about what was going on with that. So can you just walk us through, like, can you start at the beginning on how are these financial services, how are they, it almost sounds like they're treating them like musicians, right? Where it's like, you'll have these players who are entering into contracts with different financial firms and saying, from an early, this firm will give them X amount of dollars, and as a result, for the rest of their career, they're expected some kind of
they're
royalty.
paying a percentage back.
They're paying a percentage back,
and that's where the conversation is taking place. Is let's say we go to college, right?
Yeah,
I go to
just
college.
Like start at the beginning. Like,
absolutely.
Let's say you've got a player who's a junior in high school playing ball.
Not even it's So let's take it back even more. That you have these kids that are overseas right now. So you look at the international draft, right? Like I'm looking at the international draft where once these kids turn 16, they can become professional players, right? So you look at that aspect of it where kids make, right now I think this past year I think one of the kids made close to $8 million. Right, as a signing bonus.
A 16-year-old.
16-year-old kid.
Made
signs.
$8 million.
$8 million
dollars
to
and so
sign.
that to go to college or to
No,
go straight into
to go into the development programs for these teams, right, in the Dominican Republic or Venezuela or wherever they're from on the international side, right? So
development programs, meaning they go into the minor league system.
yes, pretty much, but it's
So they're
it's
making $8
before the
million to
minor
go
leagues
into
is
the
pretty
minors?
much what it is. It's the development programs for the minor leagues eventually, right?
Okay.
That teams have. They have their facilities, within the Dominican Republic. They have in Venezuela. They have in Mexico. They have these their facilities out there that the kids will go train.
Is that the team paying them that money, or is it one of these?
The teams.
The teams
This
are
is the
paying.
teams, right? But
Okay.
I'm just giving you the perspective of how young these guys will start making money,
Okay.
right? So let's say, and this is the extreme is the $8 million, but you have kids that will sign for 175,000, 250,000, whatever the number may be, right? And as these kids develop, right? Let's say as an 18-year-old, he's developed to become something pretty special. Within the data that they have nowadays, right, within all the numbers and all of the information that is gathered through the course of that kid's minor league career, right, which is
Money. It's all Moneyball, all the stats.
it's all the Moneyball stuff. So right, so they basically have all this information and say, hey, this kid is progressing to become this type of player, right? We have the estimations of what the kid could potentially become because of where he's at within development. He can potentially make in his major league career will make $10 million, right? Just to put a number on it. Hey, you're going to make at least $10 million in your career if you keep doing what you're doing, right? So now you'll have companies come in and sell you that. Be like, hey, look, we have all the data. We know you're a great player. The team has you really high in their within the rankings of the organization. They believe that you're going to become something special. We want to invest into your future, right? And then they'll say, hey, we'll give you a percentage of this money up front. And from there, you'll have to give us the number, maybe 15% that you can potentially pay us once you do get your $30 million, $40 million contract potentially, right? And that's how they'll go about it to the selling point on these companies, right? Now, it's crazy to think about, but the kid may never make it, right? So you look at that standpoint, and these companies are willing to take that risk.
So that was a question I had. So kind of jumping ahead to that, but you bring it up. So like, let's say that happens. Like, kid's got a lot of potential, and they're running the numbers, and they're like, we feel that. So when a $20 million player or a $50 million player, is that their earnings from the team, like what they're getting compensated by the team to play, or is that including all of their NIL stuff?
Well, for them, for on the pro side, the NIL stuff doesn't really translate. It's more the investment side, because think about it, these kids didn't go to high school or didn't go to college or anything to that extent, right? So
Okay.
the NIL is completely separate. It's more along the lines of the U.S. and the NCAA aspect of it, right? So
Okay.
I'm just talking about the investment side of the game right now,
Right.
rather than the NIL side. We'll put it all together after this. So we're basically making an estimation that this player might potentially make that, right? And we'll get that chunk of money.
Make it from like so the Yankees bring this player in, they're gonna sign him to a contract where
Yes.
they're making $100 million, and so they're saying we predict that the Yankees will offer you $100 million contract, and
Yes.
so we're going to give you upfront 10% of that. Okay?
10%, sure. You
Okay.
know, so the projectability is there for this player to at least make 10 million a year,
Mhm.
which that company will get 15% of the 10 million that he potentially will make, which is a 1.5 million. Right?
So is the company taking a risk that, like, what if that player gets injured? Are they on the
then
hook
you
for
know
it?
then they're up for it. You know, they invested that money into it, but they were willing to take that risk. And of course, they'll have their insurances where they're protected to the extent. So you can look at all the logistics behind it. At the end of the day, what potentially may happen is, hey, we'll invest 10 million into you, but they'll take out a policy of 10 million just in case the kid doesn't make it to where he has to make it. So they'll get their money back in that standpoint, right? Or they'll pay the difference. So to that extent.
It's interesting. So do the insurance companies, so basically, do they cover, like, it makes sense if the kid gets injured, like they're in a car accident or
Yes.
something, and it has nothing to do with their, just their performance.
Yeah.
And so that makes sense. Insurance is there for, these special cause things.
Yes.
But is there fine print? Like, what if it's just, as they age, for whatever reason, their just performance starts to drop.
Yes.
Still the same thing. It's
No,
there's no small print that says
there'll
like
be on the insurance side of things, right? So we were talking about the investment on the insurance side. Every year, it's going to be off the evaluation of what he potentially did that last year.
oh, so
right?
they'll keep updating.
So
it.
yeah, so you'll get
It's
a
like
new
a
policy.
yearly
Yeah,
review.
you'll get a new policy every year. If you sign up $100 million contract, you can sign for 100 million or whatever the case may be. Like the way that you want to think about it is like, let's say arbitration. So and we can discuss this as we go, but as an arbitration player, let's say you go to arbitration and you're guaranteed now to make at least $2.5 million, right? Within that $2.5 million, now you're going to protect that $2.5 million because let's say going into year 2 of arbitration, you can potentially make 4.7, right? Potentially. So if you get hurt within the season, so you just got paid that $2 million, right? And you go into that season that you can potentially make some more, you're going to get a policy that's close to the number that you're projected to make and insure that number just in case you do get hurt.
So is
right?
that the players managing and
Yes.
looking for all these policies, or is that your job as the agent? You're
As an
saying,
agent, we want to
like-
have people that we work with that will put them in a good positions to make sure that they're protected to that extent.
It's like, so because some kid in high school or coming to the Dominican, they don't know anything.
They don't know any different, and that's where my job is coming into play. Is like I want to make sure that these kids have a plan,
Yeah.
right, or at least talk to people that will help them create this plan to put them in a good financial situation. At the end of the day, that's what it is.
So as you're talking about this, I'm starting to get lost. So can we?
There's a lot of information that we're discussing.
So can you just like walk it through? Like, let's say a hypothetical and not a
international draft.
not international. Like, let's just say
just a regular high school kid now.
Yeah, let's just say we've got a high school kid
right?
who's been doing well, been playing.
Yeah.
And has, they want to play, they're motivated.
Yeah.
And they have, if they continue to work hard
Mhm.
and continue to play, they may have an opportunity to go into college and eventually professional ball. So can you just like walk us through what that looks like?
So that progression right there is okay. Let's say Sean gets to his senior year, he has the potential of going into college, right? He's gonna be able to play college. He's gonna commit to a college, right? And let's say it's a smaller D1, and he'll make his first NIL deal, right? Within the commitment and the school wanting him to come and everything along those lines, they'll come up to you and say, hey, this is what we want to take care of for you. We're going to take care of your living. We're going to take care of your food expenses, and we're going to pay you $50,000 to come to school. Beautiful. That's what they take care of, right? What you do with your $50,000, they don't care.
In addition to, I'm assuming they also like waive tuition or give you a scholarship.
Yes, so now there's 34 scholarships no matter what, through the whole process.
Right, because they've got
because they minimized it all, and now everybody gets a scholarship.
So it's like, so you get a scholarship and then another 50,000 on top of that, or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you got a kid.
So so that's that first year college, right? So that's that first little something that they make, right? The school itself doesn't care what they make, right? Now you go into year 2. Let's say you had a great year, right? You performed, you hit 300, you had the numbers to put you in a position to potentially make $150,000, right?
So when you say potentially make 150, what do you mean? Like just who's calculating that?
The back to the data. The data is giving you the average number that we can spend on a player, right? So this is all now a part of it. Is like the kid put up these amount of numbers.
Uh-huh.
They're going to put it into the system. The system's going to say, hey, this is where he's potentially at.
Okay.
Right? That he can make $150,000 no matter where he goes to school because he performed to an extent.
Oh, I see. So they're basically looking at other schools would be willing to pay this kid
Potentially
$150,000 because his numbers are at that performance.
Because he performed.
His or her number
is performed to that number. That's his projectability to make that year, right?
Because every school they've got okay, that makes sense. They've got some budget allocated. They want to win.
Yeah.
Right. And
so they're gonna be willing to give a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on the budget.
So and then
on the player.
I was to say there's like a correction factor there because then they're also going to be looking at, okay, maybe their numbers aren't as great, but they also have like 80,000 followers. So there's a little
give
social media correction factor there where they're like, yeah, you're not doing as well as we'd like. if you if you strip the the social media out of it, you're a $75,000 player. But because you've got 80,000 followers, you're actually worth 150,000.
There you go.
Interesting.
And there you go. So that's a part of the negotiations, and it's the reality of it, right? So
Yeah.
you look at the Texases of the world, the Texas Tech, Texas A&M, where they're paying a lot of money. They want to have the high influence players at the end of the day, and that's a part of the process that it's all intertwining. At the end of the day, you look at it and it is what it is, right? So you go into year 2, you're making $150,000. Beautiful. Now from there, let's say that you have a phenomenal year. You're one of the top players in the country, right? Now you put yourself in a position where I'm going to go into the transfer portal because I know I have the ability to go to play in the SEC.
Right.
And I want to play with one of the best teams in the country to potentially have a shot at the College World Series and make some money while I'm doing it, right? I'm going to go look at Texas. I'm going to go look at the Texas A&Ms. I'm going to go look at the Tennessees of the world. Now I have leverage because instead of 80,000 followers, I have 160,000 followers, right? Now I have a big time social media influence. At the same time, I put up the numbers that I needed to put up to put myself in a position. I am a draft eligible player that I know that I'm potentially going to make X amount of dollars in the draft as of right now. And I have all of the NIL deals off the field that are putting me in a position where I'm more valuable than certain players, right? So you're looking at the whole package now. Now we've created the package, and this is what I'm talking about. This is what we want to help our players kind of create for themselves, because the reality is it's going to put them in a more powerful positions to negotiate, right? Now we go to Texas and say, hey, Texas, I want 750,000. Okay, great. We can give you that number. Okay, we're going to go to Texas. We're going to give them the same number. Or we're going to go to Tennessee. We're going to give them the same number. We're going to go to A&M and give them the same number, right? Now I have the negotiation power to say, these guys got to fight for me. Hey, this school gave me this. This one said this. This one said that. We're playing the game. Now you're playing the game. That's what it is. Who's gonna invest into me that much more? Where eventually your number might make it to $1 million a year, right? And
so when you mentioned they're draft eligible, and that was one of the things that I overheard you talking about with the other parents on is, so at this point, it sounds like there are players who are, studs, top performing players that actually have an opportunity to, would they forego signing with one of the clubs and going into major leagues? Would they stay within the collegiate system? Because you're making more money as college players.
Because you're making more money. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the negotiations, once you get drafted, say, hey, this school is willing to pay me X amount of dollars to come back. Can you guys beat it? Can you guys match it? Can you guys compensate for it, knowing that I can go back to school and make another $1 million if I want to?
And maybe I just misunderstood. So are the ball clubs saying? Because what I thought I heard you say was that some of the ball clubs are like, okay, we obviously want you as part of our organization. However, you'll be better off going in and having a collegiate career before you come into
potentially, yes.
So how does that work?
That's on the high school side. If you get drafted as a high school player and you take the opportunity out of high school, right? Like if you're one of the top players in the country per se, and we'll come back to that. If I'm one of the top players in the country, now my negotiations will play off of, hey, I can go to Tennessee that's going to potentially give me to come to school right now. They're estimated to pay me $1.5 million through my 3 years there. Mm-hmm. Are you guys going to be able to match that number?
One of the ball clubs.
Can you guys match that number or do better? I want to go to school. Everybody nowadays is going to tell a scout that, hey, I want to go to school as a high school kid, because at the end of the day, it's a part of the negotiation process.
Yeah, because especially if you're making that kind of money, you come out with a degree as well.
You come out with a degree. You get right. Colleges have leverage now because of that factor, right? And knowing how the development side of it is, the 3 years that you potentially may spend in rookie ball, low A and high A, is going to be what you do in college. And then once you get done with your college career after junior year, you'll go straight to double A potentially, right? So I'd rather go to school, get a degree, make almost the same amount of money and maybe a little bit more if I invest it the right way. Now I'm coming into my professional career as an established player
Right.
with a lot of money in my bank account. Now you guys have to pay me, and at the same time, I'm gonna be put in a position where I don't need you guys. I don't need you like we used to need them back in the day. Back in the day, like when I was playing, I didn't make any money in college. The only thing that was taken care of was a couple of bucks for my tuition to make sure it was evened out. But outside of that, my parents paid for everything, right? So I'm looking at the leverage aspect of it is a lot more nowadays because of the simple fact that there's money in college sitting around waiting on me, you know?
That was so that reminded me of one of the other things that I had overheard you talking about was, so you have these kids going in, they're young kids, and they're being offered like a cash infusion, and but you were talking about how the financial industry recognizes that these guys don't know anything about managing their money, and so they there's either requirements or they guide them and is in, all right, we'll give you X amount of dollars, and however, you're not free to just go spend it on a car or to have like crazy parties. You will how what you had mentioned was these firms will work with the students and say, well, we're going to go invest this money for you.
Yes.
We'll buy rental property or whatever else. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing as far as how are these firms recognize these are kids that don't necessarily have the experience or the know-how as to how to manage this kind of money?
Yeah.
So what are they doing to make sure that they're not being idiots?
Well, us as agencies, we have companies that we work with, right? So we'll have those insurance companies, we'll have those investment companies that we trust to do the right things for the players as a whole, and we'll put them in those positions to go, have those conversations with them and just try to put the players in the best position possible to get the information that they need. At the end of the day, we want to educate. That's our job. If I educate you enough on and off the field, I know that you're going to be financially set for the rest of your life potentially, right? You just got to make the right moves. So now we have these companies that will come in and kind of build a plan depending on how much money you can potentially make, right? So they'll look at it and say, okay, we're going to build a plan out for that first year of college, right? We may say, hey, we'll look at the negotiations aspect of it. Instead of $50,000, we want to grab 40, and the school itself has to put that money into, let's say, a Roth IRA, right? And they build out this plan that they basically will say, hey, this is what you're going to give your school if they're willing to take care of these moving pieces to make sure that you're financially set. That's exactly what we're going to do. They give them a spreadsheet. This is how you're going to invest your money. And you have companies that are willing to invest into that with these players.
So that's part of what you're doing as far as just the kids, the kids are like, oh, great, the school's going to give me 50 grand. You're not just cutting them a check for 50, or, I mean,
I don't want that personally. There's some agencies that will say, hey, you get your 50 grand, you get your 50 grand. I don't make anything out of this. I don't make any, like in the NIL side of things, we don't make as agents, we don't make anything for it. We just try to put them in those positions. For me, I know that I want to make sure that they're educated on how to grab this money.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's 3 years. In college, at the end of the day, it's like you don't need much, right? As long as you have the important foundations taken care of, you don't need anything else outside of it. You're still a college kid. You're going to go have a good time. And at the end of the day, having a little bit more money later is more important than having it now. And I think that's
so that's the position you're, is, I guess, what I had overheard you talking about, maybe I misheard you, was, so like, let's say they're a junior, sophomore, junior, approaching senior year in college, they've got a potential, like you were saying, $2.5 million player coming out of school, and you have these financial firms that are approaching them saying, we'd like to invest in your future, and however the insurance company aspect plays in. And what I had heard you talking about was they recognize that a kid coming out of school isn't necessarily some ways with their money. So they say, look, we're not just going to cut you a check for $1 million. We are going to help you invest in things that set you up for the future. So like, we'll go buy rental property that we co-own. So can you talk about that? Like, how are the financial services, and how is the financial services industry like guiding these players and how to manage their money?
Well, I think it's going to it's going to be different for everybody, you know, depending on your money amount that you potentially may make. But for me, there's a basic understanding of, like, let's say, you know, conversations that I've had up to this point is, okay, like we talked about, that $50,000, you can put it into a Roth IRA, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be tax-free money at a certain point. You don't have to worry about it. You do a lump sum of that 50K, and you have everything at school taken care of for that first year, right? So now you have this policy that's potentially growing, and you don't have to worry about it, because 5 years down the road, if you need 40 grand, you'll be able to take out 40 grand tax free and be
Right.
able to invest it into whatever you want, right? So that's like kind of that first step. Then you look at that second step and say, hey, you're going to get $150,000. We can buy a property out here. Let's say for a first time buyer at a 3.5% down payment, you can use that 150,000. You can get 3 properties potentially, right? And then kind of build off of that, those structures within what this individual is capable of doing within the money aspect of it.
Is
Right?
that
So
is that your guidance as the agent that's saying, hey, here's how we're going to help you use this money to the best of your, here's how we're going to help you.
yeah, so for us on the agent side, like, this is things that I have learned within the conversations that I've had, and I use it
Yeah.
as an example, right? Like, this is
Okay.
an example that you have, but everybody can view it a little bit differently, right? You can, and I'm just looking at it from my years and what I potentially would have made,
Right.
and that's the conversation I had, and that's how these firms broke it down for me. It's like, hey, you can go here, here, and here for those first 3 years, where it puts you in a position where you're making 10 grand a month. You know, and at the end of the day, 10 grand a month takes care of mostly everything, and
Yeah,
you don't
it's-
have to worry about anything.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
So
120 grand a year is decent.
it's
income.
a good way to start as a young
Especially as
athlete, where you're gonna go play in the minor leagues potentially. You know,
Right.
so that's what I'm breaking down for you, is that's the conversation that I'm having, because now, let's say year 2, you invest into a couple of properties in the college town where you know you have an investment firm taking care of those investments. You're receiving a check, right, and you're getting all the documentation behind it. You're building equity, and you're putting yourself in a position where you're receiving a check for, you know, let's say 3 grand. Let's just put the number 3 grand that you're making off of these 3 properties. Now you're going into your third year, where you have a property that's building equity. You have a Roth IRA that's basically a tax-free money coming out of it. And then you go into year 3 and you make a lot of money, right? Within my year, going into my year 3, I would have made $1 million. You can grab that $1 million, put it into a stock market, into dividend stocks, and you're getting paid X amount of dollars a year just from those dividend stocks, if you're going to just look at it to that extent.
So is that still the player or the player's family who's making that decision, as far as we're going to do the right thing and invest this money versus just go and spend it? Or is it, or
it's
are
the player's decision at the end of the day?
It
We
still
try to
is.
guide them.
Okay.
We try to guide them as best as we can. That's our job. I just want to make sure that they're put in a position where, if I was once in those shoes and I took those steps, I would have never had to work another day in my life if I didn't
Right.
want to, right?
Okay.
Like, that's how we're looking at it, and that's why we're putting these players in those positions at the end of the day.
The companies that are making that early investment, saying, hey, we've projected that you're in the course of your career, you're going to make 20, 30, $40 million. So we're going to give you an early cash infusion of like $1 million. Are they putting those type of requirements in place, where it's like, we'll give you this upfront money, however, we don't want you to, we don't trust you to just go do whatever you're going to do it.
And in my opinion, I would advise in, hey, we'll give you this money. We want you to receive a check, you know, for $5,000 a month, and we'll make sure that we take care of it. That's my personal opinion on it. That's how I would want to get them. But at the end of the day, it's up to the player.
It's still up to the player.
It's always up to the player, you know. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to guide my player, I'm going to tell him, hey, this is the best thing for you, and I know it is. You know, whether you wanna have a flashy car and all that stuff, you don't need it. You don't need it. I know you want to have it, but if you do the right things, you'll be able to pay for that fancy car without coming out of your pocket.
So it's
always up to the player. It's our job to advise and help and mentor in that direction. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to the player.
Hopefully they have some good people in their lives to help them, guide them in the right direction.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey man, we've been talking for over an hour. Are you good? Do you need a break?
I'm okay. Whatever we need.
I'm
good. Yeah, I'm good. Beauty.
All right. I might take that 4th beer and pound it in here. Sorry. So, I did want to. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
we've been talking about this for a while. So I mean, I feel like this is all that, I have no, all that's just really interesting to me
Mhm.
as far as I mean, overall, I think it's definitely, we're moving in the right direction. These
Yeah.
players should be compensated. They've worked really hard.
Mhm.
And, I'm sure we could talk for another hour about it. Is there anything else specifically that we haven't discussed that you think is important to talk about related to like just this development of that whole system in general?
Well, I think another point of conversation for us. Yeah. I think another point of conversation for us is getting to that point, right? As a player, I think it's getting there and understanding the development side of the youth that we sometimes don't recognize for what it is, because as parents, we're going to be very delusional to my kid's the best player in the world. This
Right.
is what it is. And the reality is, like, I look at my son, I love my son, but he has a lot of things to work on. And I can see that because I've been there, I've done it, I understand it, and development takes time, and understanding of what is necessary takes time. And you have to be able to see that for what it is. And a lot of people don't, they've never been there. Unfortunately, you haven't been there. And you can't tell me that I don't know better on what is important for a player and as a kid to develop into what could potentially be a thing, because even my son may never make it.
Right.
Most of them are never going to make it. That's the reality of life, and that's when people don't recognize it, and they try to put this pedestal on these kids and push them to an extent that isn't healthy, in my opinion, right? So, being now talking on the youth side, why I created the Aces was, one, because I wanted my son to have a fun experience, and two, because I wanted to help kids just develop in a way where they're going to have an opportunity to at least play high school and get a scholarship. That's the goal. If I can have a kid get a scholarship and they came out of the Aces, I won. And at the end of the day, that's my goal. I don't If they make it professionally, great. If they make it and become a $20 million player, great. But the reality is, I just want them to get past that point where I saw a bunch of my teammates in high school never get another opportunity to play again.
Right.
Right.
So that's my daughter right now is a senior in high school, and
Mhm.
dude, going through that whole, like, where is she being accepted to school? Just the cost of school, even in states, freaking crazy nowadays. It's nuts. So it's like I definitely can relate to, like, hey, that's a great goal. Like, hey, can we just, if they're interested in playing, right, and they have some potential, just let's see if we can get your school paid
just a
for.
free just a
Just
free
get your
free
school paid
education.
for.
That's
Yeah,
it.
free
That's
education.
it. And I think that's the biggest kicker behind it. And I think that's a great conversation for everybody to be able to listen to. Is, at the end of the day, I look at players, right, that have gotten drafted, that have made a career for themselves, and all the activities that they did through the course of it all. And I look at it and say, right now, like, at least here in Arizona, there's a lot of parents that buy into the, hey, playing one sport is the best way to go because they're going to train specifically to that sport more time than anybody else, right? And then you see it all the time, and then there's conversations that we have about it that is a point of detail to the development of kids nowadays. It's like, oh no, that's the way to go, and it's like, actually no, that's not the way to go. Because if I'm looking at it and I look at the development of these guys that have gotten drafted, they're multi-athletes through the course of it. The best ones, multi-athletes. They trained very specifically to being an athlete, not being a baseball player, right? And that's the conversation that we can go into. And it's like, if I'm looking at the big picture, I want my son to play basketball, football, tennis, golf. I can go down the line, because at the end of the day, if I need to break down every sport to what I know within the movement side of it, to the development mentally, to the IQ side of it, you're building different muscle groups, and you're building different strategic ways of learning to put you in a position that when it matters within the sport that you like the most, you're able to be adjustable to every element within the game.
Interesting. So okay, that makes, so by doing a lot of very different things, you're like, it reminds me of when I remember as a kid taking swimming lessons, and it was like, when you're a
Had the
younger
best
kid,
years of my college career because we swam as a training mechanism for our shoulders, which is
Interesting.
nuts. And that's what I mean. We can talk about that later on.
It
But yeah,
makes sense, but I mean, it makes sense though. But
yeah.
I just remember my swimming instructor, because I had like, I don't know, my parents, I had taken a break from swimming lessons for a while, but then it was like, well, let's just go back and finish
Mhm.
all of the classes. And so I was a little bit older than
Mhm.
some of the other kids in the class. And I remember my instructor just being like, well, she's like, you get this really fast because you're older and you understand your body more, right?
Mhm.
And so it's like, that makes sense though, that by playing a lot of different sports, you're learning how your body works. You're
Mhm.
learning how your body moves and how to use it. And so I can see how it's like that can, by learning how your body works, it helps you excel in all of your
Mhm.
sports, right? Even if it isn't, you're not, swimming or playing golf, or I don't know. Like Sean right now is playing volleyball,
Yeah.
and it's like I love playing volleyball. It's like, even whether or not it's going to improve your baseball, it's still more development. I don't know. It seems like
And I can explain that because it is something that people don't understand, right? It's like you look at it and say, I love watching him play volleyball. He's learning, but I look at it as the motor skills that he's developing because he has to jump. He has to time up the ball to hit it, right? As a outside hitter or a
right,
middle or anything along the lines. Now, the acceleration that you have to develop to hit the ball, be accurate, and place it somewhere, right, is the same throwing motion as it is to throw a baseball per se, right? So I'm looking at that and I'm saying there's such quality that he's developing because now at the point of impact, which is almost a point of release,
right,
I'm building strength through the hits,
right,
right? Which is the same thing that we do with the baseball when we go throw the baseball, right? And now we're off the ground, so we have to pattern the energy that we use to jump,
right.
time, and be able to still get the flexibility and strength to drive through the baseball, which is something that in baseball is like the Derek Jeter play, right? You look at the Derek Jeter play, he's going in the hole, he's going to go make the throw, but he has to be able to throw the baseball on a line for 120 feet in the air. Same thing as volleyball, right? So people don't recognize that, but that's just my take on it because it's
I agree with you though, because I'm like, even though, I don't know, it's just overall, like you mentioned it, it's like developing yourself as an athlete,
Mhm.
right? Just being athletic
Mhm.
and knowing your body. And regardless of whether you're excelling, whether you're developing those skills through volleyball and baseball, like if you're improving your timing and your, control of your body playing volleyball, that's going to translate to the
Mhm.
other sports that you're playing.
it's going to translate.
It's going to translate. It
And
makes sense.
that to me on the development side is the most important part, right? Like I look at it and I look at the progression of kids as a whole, right? What's the hardest, and this is a question for you, what is the hardest way to translate within sports? Like what do you think is the hardest thing to do when it comes to muscle memory, to feeling, to body, like body awareness and all of that? Like what sport do you think is the hardest one to figure out?
In terms of just like having control of your
Having
body.
control of everything that's going on. Which one do you think it is?
I'm not golf.
Okay, sure. And it's that's actually a really good point. But why? Because we have to make a decision based off a ball that's literally an inch off the ground. So that's a good
And I've
way to
struggled
look
with
at it.
it
Yeah,
at
of course.
late
And I struggled with it as a baseball player that hit a ball off the tee for my whole life.
Right.
You know, but you look at it and it's because that ball is extremely far away from your eyes, right? So you have to calculate how to get everything perfectly
Right.
centered to hit that ball on a consistent basis, right? And
There's
hit
so
it into
many
a certain.
little.
Oh gosh, it's
It's the
so
same as like
frustrating.
hitting a fastball.
Yes.
There's so many like little tiny things that could go
And
wrong.
scoring it up and doing everything
Yeah.
right? You know what sport for me is the hardest? Soccer. Why? Because I have to send my whatever I see and I have to tell my feet to do it. And it has to run through my whole body
Right.
to make sure that my feet are juggling that ball and calculating how to make sure that one, I'm juggling the ball the way that I need to, and at the same time trying to work through a defender and making sure that everything is functioning within body awareness to try to then kick the ball and put it into a place and put it in a specific spot. So the body has to work so hard to be able to establish that and build consistency behind it, which is the hardest part, right? So you're working the whole body to that standpoint. Now, hands, so eye to hands, basketball, football, baseball, it's a little bit easier because it's closer to you. Like anything else, if I see a fastball up in the zone, I see it better. The further it is away, the harder it is for me to calculate how to get my hands to the ball. That's the reality of it, and I have to work harder with my body to be able to make that adjustment, right? So I'm looking at that development. If I tell a kid from 5 to 8, you only play soccer and then do everything else for fun, that's a perfect thing for me, because you have to work everything that's going on in your body to the development side. Now from there, you go into the 8 to 12 range, right? Age-wise, play everything. Why play everything? Because at that point in time, kids are sponges. Everything that they get, they're going to be able to adjust to a lot quicker because their minds have taken that first step of development.
Yep.
And at the same time, you're learning how to move, right? Soccer is going to teach you one thing. Football is going to teach you another. Baseball, you go down the line. You go down the line to every sport. Try every single sport during those periods of time, because it's going to teach you motor skills that you're going to learn just by playing.
Right.
Like,
and you're not going to get anywhere.
You're not going to get it. And at the end of the day, those are the most important years of development when it comes to skill set.
8 to 12.
Right? 8 to 12. Right. From there, we take that first step of maturity. Right. You take the teens, that first teens where your mind is all over the place. You're trying to figure out your emotions. You're going through that whole phase, but you're growing up. Right. So now for me, this is where, okay, do I want to make a commitment on one side or another? I'm extremely athletic, but do I pick one? Right now, I make the decision on, let's say I want to play football and baseball because one is in the fall, one is in the spring. Right now, I have time to be able to work on both, but you're still developing what football gives you within skill set to IQ to coaching style. Right now, you're dealing with other people. You're learning how to deal with other people and other coaching styles and everything along the lines. You go to the baseball, same thing. Right? And you're developing this understanding of how everything needs to work, right? Because you're maturing, right? To then eventually saying, hey, I want to go play baseball or football or basketball, whatever it is that you want to play, but you just have the ability to be able to make adjustments quickly and be able to translate it.
You're flexible, adaptable, and flexible.
You're adaptable. That's a good word to put into it within development, right? And of course, then now the strength and conditioning comes into it on the high school side. You're training a very specific way, which is what we were just talking about with Eli. He has to start developing that. The same way with Sean, he has to start developing the strength and conditioning side and learning how to now create consistency / longevity within it all. And that comes with being strong, like anything else. So now you have that 13 to 18 to then, of course, when you go into college, you're becoming a man or you're becoming a woman and you're really developing that side of it. And you're getting to the point where your peak years are coming into play. It's just putting everything together to what you eventually want to accomplish as an athlete.
So through like middle school into high school, you're saying still be the 4-sport athlete.
Do it. And then I think it's very important, and that's why. And I look at it, and I was thinking about it with the Eli's knee situation. I'm like, I should put him in swimming, because you spend so much time doing this on a consistent basis,
and it's not
it's not an impactful sport where he's developing muscle groups. He's learning how to use certain parts of his body, but it's not putting stress on his knee.
Not to get too personal, but he just had a knee injury, so that's what we're talking about.
So
Paco's son just had a knee injury, so I'm talking about that.
So those were the things that I'm looking at. And I'm like, man, you know what? It might be good just to put him in the summertime since it's hot. Go throw him in the pool and let him learn how to sprint in the pool. And be a sprinter and just run and just, do 50 meters or 100 meters. And try to figure out the freestyle, whatever it is, that they want to teach him. But it's going to develop everything that he needs to stay healthy on the field, right? So I'm looking at it that way. And that's the way that I kind of process information all the time, right? And to me, like, that's where we lose sight of it. And you have all these parents that are like, oh, it's baseball. And I'm like, one, your kid's going to get burnt out.
Yeah.
Right? Because he's every day in, day out, just doing baseball. You're letting him jump around from team to team and just wear and tear that people don't recognize for what it is, right?
That's one thing too, because kids Sean's he gets along with most people, right? So it's like he can walk into a new team and he's like can make friends pretty quick.
Completely
But it would be hard to just constantly be. I feel like for a younger kid, like having just some continuity with the buddies that you're playing with, like that. There's a lot of value there,
Yeah.
right? Like just having your buddies that you're playing with, and you know that's who you're going to be with, for X number of seasons in a row. There's some value there.
Yeah. 100%, and that's, and then like you said, Sean gets along with everybody. A kid, he is who he is in that aspect, and he can jump into any locker room. But there's some kids that are the opposite, right? And it's harder for them to kind of develop those tendencies of being comfortable.
Yeah, so right. It's like there's some value in like, hey, they recognize, it's safe. It's a safe space because they know these kids, right?
And and to me, like that understanding is very important. Don't get me wrong. Like my kid loves to play baseball, probably prioritize around baseball, but I still have him play football, go play basketball, go try soccer, go try all these different sports, because the reality is like none of this matters right now. And people they want to live and die through the weekend championships. And at the end of the day, like you look at my program, I'm not looking to win.
Right.
I can care less about the winning. I want these kids to show up to the field, have a quality routine, build on the IQ that I give them on a consistent basis, have them fail, hold them accountable for failure, and learn from it at the end of the day. And that consistency is what's actually going to develop within the different positions that they potentially may play.
Yeah.
So when they do get to high school, they know how to play the position, they know how to hold themselves accountable for making mistakes, and they're able to play at the highest level that they can individually. That's going to make them better teammates at the end of the day. That's the goal, That
was one of the things that I recognized early on with you, and with I can't remember his name right now, but with the coaches that you've had, you've done a good job at putting people in place that have the right priorities.
Yeah.
Right. And so, because that was one thing that I was always concerned with Sean, like getting into club ball, is like I want the coaches and the people who are, these authority figures. I want their values to be aligned with my values, which is he's there to enjoy himself and to learn the game. I could give a shit if they've got a winning record.
Yeah.
Right? Like
I can care less.
Obviously, the kids want to win,
of course, and we want to teach winning, but they have to do it together. And that's my biggest thing. It's like if collectively. One, I'm taking care of players, right? I'm protecting their arms. I'm protecting their future. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. And it causes me to lose games because of it. Fuck it.
Yeah, who cares?
Who gives a shit?
No one's going to get...
Nobody cares.
I have no idea what the Aces record was last spring.
And
a year ago. I have no idea.
You're telling me I don't care either.
Yeah.
I can tell you what the record was, because at the end of the day, I'm looking at it day in, day out. I am trying to help these kids recognize, did we have a good game? Did we have a bad game? Did we win? Did we lose? Why did we win and lose?
What did you do well? What do you need to work on?
And that's how I break down every meeting. I don't break down the meetings and tell them, oh, you guys did great, you guys won, whatever. No, I just break it down. Hey, man, you did a really good job on the mound. You attacked the zone. You went to first two out of three first strikes, and we played quality defense behind that. We got into the dugout. We scored a couple of runs, right? And I break down the progression of the game to help them recognize why the mojo was on our side or wasn't on our side, and break it down to that extent. Like, the win, lose, or draw, great. Yeah, it's fantastic that there's organizations out there that win on a consistent basis. Good for them. But at the end of the day, are we doing what's right for the kids?
Right.
And for me, that's where I'm passionate about, and I'll defend myself to that standpoint, because the reality is I know that I'm doing what's best for the kids within what I see. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to get it right all the time, but I know I'm going to try to make the best decisions to give these guys the opportunity from what they're showing me day in, day out.
I've seen it too, because some of the teams that that the Aces have played against in some of these tournaments, it's like they're only batting 9 players. It's like, but they've got 3 or 4 other kids sitting on the bench. It's like if my son's
if he's
12
not playing, what are we doing?
Yeah, why am I there? He's like, I could care less that they're winning or losing the game. My kid's here to get reps and to get experience, right? So that was one thing that I recognized early on that I really appreciated about your approach with the team. That was one thing I wanted to ask you about, is like, so. This owning a youth sports organization, that's still new to you. You've been doing it for what, 4 or 5 years now. So what are some of the difficult things? Can we talk about that? Like, what are some of the things that have been hard as far as like developing a youth sports club that you've run into? Like, what would you say is the hardest thing that you've had to deal with?
The hardest thing, and it's a part of what we've been talking about, is the understanding of the process and seeing the bigger picture, and I think it's the hardest thing is having all the parents be on the same page to that standpoint. There's many times within the course of the years that I've been doing this where parents get upset that we're not winning enough, or that the kid isn't performing enough, or everybody has opinions about how everything is being ran because we're not winning, and everything gets magnified in that aspect.
You feel like they're focusing on winning versus losing?
Yeah, like anything else, when everybody wins, everybody feels good about themselves. When everybody's losing, everybody's going to blame each other, And at the end of the day, I don't put any blame on it. I put in, hey, we didn't do a job as a team, and that's the reality of it. And we lose sight of that, and I think parents don't recognize that at the end of the day, this doesn't mean anything.
Right.
We're playing to figure out how to win and how to do it together, and how to teach these kids about certain situations within the games and the failures that come within the game. And these kids are going to be better off failing more than they are succeeding. They're not going to know how to fail when it comes to the important years of their life. And right now, if we're losing a one-run ball game and they're upset about it, good. That's exactly what should happen. If we win by one run and we found a way to get through that point, good. That's exactly what we want. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. I'm not here to beat teams 15 to 2. It doesn't help anybody.
Right.
At the end of the day, that's what I'm looking at. And it's like, and if we do get our butts kicked to that extent, when you go down the line, we made 8 errors. Well, you know what? But we probably deserve to fucking lose. Like, that's just the reality of it. And if we're going to get upset about it, everybody comes to my practice and they're like, oh, you guys do such a great job with your practices. It's not always going to translate to wins and losses.
Right.
That's just the truth. And that's the part of that's the part of it's the hard part within the organization as a whole, is that there's people that will come in, will recognize the good, but if they don't see results, they start to fade in the good that we're actually trying to create. And I think that's the hardest part for me, is that I don't really like to deal with the bullshit. Like, I'm not a very when parents start to talk negatively about one aspect or another, I don't even want to get involved. I just want to be a baseball coach, and I want to be on the field with the kids and help them and be a part of that. I can't control what's going on off the field, but I hear the noises. I'm not. I got big ears. At the end of the day, I played in 50,000 in front of 50,000 people. I can hear what people are saying when they think that I'm not paying attention, quote unquote. But I can hear everything that's going on outside.
You can hear people talking shit about it.
Yeah, of course. You hear it all the time, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, like, I've been there, I've done it. I've had people talk shit about me. I've had people 3 feet away from me telling me about my whole life experience and where my family's from and being a spick and getting on a boat.
That kind of shit.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've heard it all. So for me, it's not a big deal, And at the end of the day,
I'm sitting here. Trust me. I'm sitting here thinking you're talking about, because I know, I will admit, there's been times where I'm like, man, why and I've asked Sean, I was like, did Paco tell you to steal home, or did you do that on your own? He's like, oh, I did that on my own. I'm like, all right. Because I'm sitting there saying, like, why the fuck did Paco send him home?
But to that extent that you go ask your son and you're like, well, I fucking did it on my own. That guy's fucking pissed right now.
I'm like, all right, was Paco mad at you for doing that? Like, that's the extent where I've been like, man, I've said this before. I'm like, man, Paco is aggressive with the base coaching. Yeah. But I didn't realize people were saying, like, to that kind of shit, like,
oh yeah, and
like
the
racist stuff.
Oh, there's so many things. I'm talking about, this is on pro ball
stuff.
So,
I thought you were talking about
the
little
parents. Things that happen nowadays. No, I don't.
Okay, I thought you were talking about Ace's parents.
Nowadays,
saying that kind of shit.
Nowadays, it's just them bickering about playing time, whatever. You can go down the line. So I don't care about any of this. So, but I'm saying in the playing days, like, I heard so much negative stuff that it goes in through one, out through the other. Right. It's you know what, it is what it is.
Right.
And I'm okay with it. Like, at the end of the day, it's.
I thought you were saying some of the Ace's parents.
No, absolutely not. No, I don't think that they've ever taken it to that standpoint. They're going to complain about what they want to complain within their viewings of the game, but that's just a part of it. And at the end of the day, you go through every organization, and all my buddies that have played professionally, that coach to this day. There's guys that I played against that are coaching now. And everybody tells you the same stories. Yeah, it is what it is, and that's just a part of being a parent. That's a part of being in youth sports, and At the end of the day, you take it with a grain of salt and you keep moving with your day, you know?
So with that, I mean, we're talking about an hour and a half. Uh, let's move on to, so you're playing your major league pitcher.
Yeah.
You got any good stories? What are some good stories about pitching for the Dodgers?
Oof.
Anything fun to talk about?
Gosh, there's to what extent, you know, we can talk about the off the field fun, we can talk about on the field.
Whatever. Like if someone
You
were
know
to ask
what?
you, like,
Yeah,
hey, what's some of your favorite memories from being in the major leagues, on the field or off the field? You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, you can go down the line, and you know, I think I appreciate. There's a lot of conversations that I had across the years. You know, like at the end of the day, you look at favorite conversations was just talking baseball grips with Kershaw. You know, one of
Oh,
those
yeah.
conversations that you just never forget about. At the end of the day, I'm a young kid, looked up to this guy for X
Yeah.
amount of years. He's one of the best lefties in the game. I'm a part of that, you know, and I get to share a conversation with him and be in the same dugout. All those things like come into play. I think having that conversation with him, and I don't forget it because we were just talking baseball where I was having some success with the slider slash cutter, and he was trying to figure out a pitch at that time. He's like, hey, how do you grip it? You know, and I was able to give a Cy Young Hall of Famer some type of
Some
advice to
insight.
potentially help him to create success,
Right.
you know, within his arsenal and what he does day in, day out, you know. So I think that's one of the cool ones for sure.
Did he use it? Did he use your advice?
He may have. You know what? I don't know to the extent he probably
You want to shoot
tweaked
him a
it
note
to
and be
his.
like, dude, did Paco?
Yeah, you know,
improve your
and that's a fun conversation. But at the end of the day, like anything else, it's like we're all always helping each other, and we're all trying to help each other, you know, get better and try to figure it out because that's the name of the game. So for me, like that's one of those moments, you know, that at the end of the day I appreciate, and I get to look back and say, man, you know what, I might have helped them, you know, regardless of the matter. So that's a cool one. I think, you know, when I first got called up for the first time, you look at the locker room as a whole. If I go down the line of the names in that locker room, like it's wild to think about.
What was that, 2012? So
yeah.
who was playing on the squad then?
So I got called up, you know, September 4th, and it's crazy to think about, but I grew up watching Josh Beckett because he was with the Miami Marlins at the time, or Florida Marlins back then. And I look at that, and he was my locker mate at that point, and the locker that's always in between. So like when you're in the big leagues, the big dogs, there's always a locker in between that's empty. But when they call up the guys in September, you know, and you expand the rosters, those guys will have to take over. So of course I'm taking over the locker that they had as extra space for themselves, you know.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
so they
yeah.
got extra
So
luck.
that's so sometimes we even bunked up, you know, it was two guys in one locker if it was a smaller locker room, you know, when we're on the road or whatnot. But you look at that aspect, of course, I have Josh Beckett on one side, which I grew up watching, and I love to watch him pitch because he was absolutely dominant with the Marlins. And then you have Matt Kemp, that was the Dodger icon at that point in time, you know. And of course, I come into the locker room, I'm sitting down, I'm over here just looking at my jersey, sitting there trying to be quiet, not saying anything. And Matt Kemp comes to the door, and he's like, damn, you're the lefty, right? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. He's like, bro, come over here, man. Let me take a picture. He grabs my jersey, makes me hold up my jersey, takes a picture. He's like, bro, send it to your mom, bro. Make sure that you let everybody kind of know what's going on, you know? So I don't forget that memory with Matt, you know, and Matt really took care of me through moments in my career where it was my birthday. Literally calls me in the morning. He's like, hey, let's go. I'm going to take you shopping. I'm going to buy you some stuff, you know, and treat you to a nice little birthday. And at the end of the day, we're on the road. But there's really cool moments in that aspect with Matt Kemp, you know, but that was like my initial, that's the way that I got introduced to Matt Kemp, you know, one of the best players in the world at that time, you know, so that was really cool. On the other end, Josh Beckett, for example, bought me my big league first watch, you know.
Right.
I was a really good rookie. I went along the lines, hey, what beer do you want? I'll write it down, make sure I grabbed it, took it on the plane, you know, when we were traveling or whatnot. And
did you see your first watch?
Yeah, my first big league watch. Yeah, first big league watch. It was a Breitling Navigator, which is really, really, really cool, you know. And Beckett basically told me, he's like, hey, like, I don't like your watch. Go get yourself a real watch and make sure that you bring me the receipt. So Josh Beckett made sure that he took care of my receipt, you know. And So I went and bought myself a watch. I didn't know where to go.
Right.
I should have gone to the district where it was all cheaper, but of course I go to the Breitling store and pay retail or whatnot.
Well, but he's covering it, so.
Of course, like anything else, and I give him the receipt, and he pays for my watch. He takes care of everything and whatnot, and gives me a check.
So wait, did you wear a watch? Do you wear a watch while you don't wear it while you're throwing?
No. This was just a watch to wear with the nice suit, and take care of all that stuff. So, and because I was a good rookie, he was like, "I'll take care of it all. Don't even worry about it." And he paid for that, So that's another cool story, on the Josh Beckett side.
I'm trying to think it. So I had already moved here, but before I moved to Arizona, I was living in Southern California.
Yeah.
And so we went up to, it's like my cousin was a big Angels fan. So we went to I went to more Angels games than I went to Dodgers games. But I did get up to Dodger Stadium.
And it's a whole different world. You're playing in LA, it's a whole different world. You get to meet a lot of cool people, actors, this, that, you go down the line and all that. So that was another thing. I got to meet a bunch of famous people, got to take pictures, did the whole gig.
Where were you living when you played for them? Were you in LA?
1 year I lived in downtown, so right down. I try to live as close as possible to the stadium. The traffic is so bad that I was.
Dude, it was
like literally the anxiety that you create just driving in the field on a day-to-day basis was wild. But I lived in downtown 1 year, and then I lived in Glendale the other years.
Okay.
And those are the two places that I lived. They're both of them 15 minutes away.
That's why people give Dodgers fans shit, because it's like they'll show up in the third inning and leave in the seventh inning. Yeah. But I'm like, that's because it's traffic.
Yeah, because you leave in the seventh, not because you don't want to watch the game, but because you want to make sure that you can get out of the stadium in a matter of 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. That's a traffic.
Yeah.
Although I still give them shit, because even here we'll go out to the Camelback.
Yeah.
I'll be like, watch, the Dodgers fans will be gone by 7.
Yeah.
They'll be done.
Oh man.
They're just conditioned to leave early.
Yeah.
It's funny, man.
So it's so there's. I can go down the line, man. I look at every teammate, and you can probably give something about those teammates that, put you in that gives you good stories at the end of the day, like anything else. So there's, I can talk about Zach Greinke. Everybody's like, oh, Zach Greinke's a little weird. And I'm like, no, you know what? I personally love Zach. He has that anxiety, that anxiety disorder, whatever you want to call it, where if there's a lot of people, he just doesn't feel comfortable, like anything else. But outside of that, great human being. He was very dry, sarcastic. So like his jokes were hilarious if you understood him. But if you didn't understand him, you're like, oh, this guy's a dick. Like this guy, like what the fuck is this guy saying right now? But if you understand him, if you're around him enough, you build that relationship. And he was a really good dude. He was super smart about the game. So having baseball conversations with him was very into detail, in the way that he pitched to guys. Like, I think that was the coolest thing. One time, you listen to him kind of talk pitching, and the way he breaks down the games was very, very into detail. He's like, I want to approach a guy in the first inning a certain way, so in the fourth it's different from that time, and it breaks it all down to have a plan depending on where the game takes me. So
that was something. That was something I just read. I think I saw it was like a YouTube short of Maddox, and it was like, from a pitcher's perspective, like how much gamemanship there is, even beyond just the at bat that you're dealing with. And so like the short was talking about how I think it was the catcher that was actually who they were talking to, and he was like, this is how I knew that Maddox was just a freaking genius, because it was like earlier in the season he pitched a guy because he knew that the team was doing well and that they'd likely see him in the playoffs. So he pitched him during the regular season game a certain way to prepare for his at bat in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to think about just like how much
chess match,
strategy,
chess match
from a pitcher's perspective.
And it's wild to think about, but that's the way that these guys, the best of the best, like they planned ahead like no other. It was wild to
months in advance. They're like, I'm going to see this guy.
They were looking at these at bats very, very strategically for certain moments that way, and it's wild to think about that. Greinke was that way. Greinke was just like Greg Maddux. He was setting up guys for later at bats, for later games, when it was important, when it wasn't. Like there was certain moments that these guys really, really put their minds into. And then you look at the Kershaws of the world, and he was just, if I execute pitches on a consistent basis, it doesn't matter who's up there, and that's the way that he approached the game. He's like, look, I have my game plan. Don't get me wrong, But my game plan was more along the lines of my commitment to the pitch and my execution to the pitch. And if I knew that I can get those two down, nobody was going to hit me. And that's a reality because that was my personality in the bullpen. You know, you don't have time to waste. So I had to make sure that I went and executed pitches and I kept my pitch count down because I needed to pitch the next day. So my job was very specific, and I needed to make sure that the execution was there right off the bat.
You mean as a reliever?
As a reliever, right? But Kershaw had a reliever, kind of a reliever mentality. He just had a plan within how his mentality was, right? To get him through 8 innings, 9 innings.
Yeah.
Because when I was there, when Kershaw was on the mound, you had a day off. Like, that's just the way that it went, you know? Like, that's what it was. But you look at his approach to it all was more of a bulldog type of mentality, when Greinke was more of a I'm a nerd and I'm gonna out nerd you kind of aspect of it, right? And both of them dominated the game during those times.
I'm trying to remember because I remember watching the Cubs play you guys. I'm trying to think if I saw you play
You may have.
in 2015. So the year before they ended up going to the series, they still ended up
2015.
2015.
I got hurt 2015.
You were hurt.
Yeah. So, but I started the season. So if it was early in the season, then I might have been there. If not, I would, I think it was like at the end of May is when I got hurt.
I was gonna ask, so what happened, man? What happened with your injury?
Also, the first injury that I had was Tommy. It was Tommy John surgery, but the first I just felt a little pop in there, and I had done it in high school and never really had problems for like those 10 years. And then, of course, you know, like anything else, wear and tear. I made a pitch during spring, kind of felt a zing in my arm, did a little rehab, tried to get back through it, and I was fine during that time. But then it happened again, and it was just my ligament had flares. So basically, you have those 3 ligaments that kind of play like this, and it was kind of in the middle and the inside, where I had like 3 little flares. That's after my career, and it was just a matter of cleaning that up. But to that extent, I had the Tommy John surgery. First, they did the bone spurs because I had bone spurs that had ripped off. They tried to clean that out, see if the ligament would hold.
Arm?
Yeah, and they put a PRP in there to see if I can just heal through the flares that I had. That didn't work, so then eventually I had Tommy John surgery, and then took care of that. Dr. Andrews took care of that, and then I was out just about 18 months, 19 months, somewhere around there. So it was a long process for sure.
Yeah.
You know, and then you look at that side of things, you know, and I'm looking at that progression. During that time, like, it was mentally very, very tough because I was a very competitive person, but I didn't handle it the right way during certain times. And this is a story that I told the kids, you know, and I'm like, why did I get traded? Right? Like, I look at it, I was with the Dodgers. I might have been hurt, but I got traded. Why did I get traded? I mean, after you analyze, you sit there, you're like, man, what did I do that could have been better? And I always tell the kids, I'm like, hey, when things are going bad, you guys need to be good teammates. And I broke down the story of me, not because I didn't care, because you can care, but I was just approaching it the wrong way. So like during the games, I was going up to the clubhouse and icing, taking care of my arm, trying to get myself back, doing everything that I felt that was necessary to really get myself back out in the field. But I wasn't being a good teammate because I wasn't out in the dugout making sure that I was taking care of the guys that were actually playing during that time. Right.
So you feel like that.
So that might have been a part of the conversation. Is like, at the end of the day, the coaches have to make the best decisions for the team, right? And as you're looking at all the pieces that you have, it's like, man, you know what? We might do better without Paco because he probably wasn't a good teammate at the time. Whether I knew my intentions were right or wrong, I wasn't picking the times to make sure that I was taking care of my teammates when it mattered, right? And during the games, I needed to be there for them. I didn't need to be in the locker room by myself, icing and trying to take care of my arm. The reality was, like, my intentions were there, right, to get back on the field.
Right. It wasn't like
I was doing it because I didn't want to be there. I was doing it because I wanted to get back, right, and help out.
Right.
But the reality was, I needed to pick and choose my battles when it came to that standpoint. And if I would have been a better teammate during that time, I might have stayed. My career would have been a little bit different. I might have gotten back healthy, knowing that those guys did a really good job with that aspect, and they knew me. They trusted me, you know, to get those big outs instead of going to a new organization where, everything was different.
You didn't have the personal relationships.
Yeah,
that you
everything
developed
was
with the other
different,
team.
you know. So those were the things that you always look back at and say, guys, you need to understand how to be a good teammate even when things are going bad. And that's always a very pure conversation that I have with the boys.
It's interesting because my cousin is she's a D3 soccer coach at one of
Yeah.
the Claremont colleges,
Yeah.
and she was just out here for a tournament. She's always here. There's a huge tournament every April, and she was talking about that. Like they do look at, in addition to just a player's stats, like what kind of teammate are they?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like can they tell, like are they a jerk?
Yeah,
Because they don't. She doesn't want to jerk on.
Seriously, there's players out there. That
I'm not saying
go,
you're a
"Wow."
jerk, but just like they look at like how does that player just carry themselves on the field and with their team,
And it's very important. And that's why for me, like I'll go look at players and I'll go see how they are, not when they perform, but how when they fail. I want to see them when they fail.
Like what's their
what's the demeanor? Do they get over it quick? Are they gonna go and slam their bat on a consistent basis? Are they gonna be upset about certain things? And that to me is what I'm looking at, because I know I was once there. I understand how it feels. And don't get me wrong, I'm gonna get upset, but you have to be able to handle your failures a certain way, and then at the same time get back to being a good teammate after you get past those feelings, right? Like anything else. And being able to get through those moments as a whole. Like that's what it is. You know?
like, so basically just are you saying like deal with the disappointment, stay positive, be good.
And like you have to recognize how to learn better, right? If I struck out, what can I learn from it, right? And keep my mind in a place where it's like, man, you know what? I took the fastball away that I probably should have attacked. I swung at a breaking ball in the dirt, right? Because I was a little antsy because I knew that I should have swung at the first pitch, and now I'm just trying to battle the last pitch. Hit a ground ball to second, or I strike out on a breaking ball that was outer half, right? Like I'm processing this information. And back in the day, I know I didn't do that. Like I would look at my failures and I would just be like, I failed, but I didn't know why I failed, right? And that's what I try to remind the guys is like, what did you learn? Don't get upset. But getting upset isn't going to help you.
It's learning
from that at bat that you can use it for the next one, right?
Right.
And that's going to put you in a better, more consistent mindset to actually create success, because baseball is a game of failing. It's what it is.
That's true, yeah. Like
it's what it is. It's hard. It's not easy.
Ted Williams, man, still only the best was 401. More than 50% of the time he failed.
Nowadays, if you hit 250, you're a really good player.
Right.
You know?
All right, man. We're approaching 2 hours, so I'm gonna cut. I really enjoy talking to you because it's like we can talk about this stuff all the time. But I did want to show. So I had like, I wanted to bring up. I made a quick clip of your throwing. Oof. I found a couple things on YouTube, and so we can't hear this, but anyone watching this,
I know exactly what this video is.
So, dude, there's this, and there's another one. So this what am I trying to say? Your delivery. Like, I don't understand, like how so that's not a balk because you're staying like that from a hitter's perspective, or from like if you're on base, like you had to have like a huge pickoff percentage, right? Because that first motion, like how many kids like thought you were entering?
I was getting ready to throw.
Yeah, getting ready to throw.
So that, and you know why that started was because I balked at a certain point, right? Because I tripped on the mound coming to sets. And because of that, like I started doing that slowly but surely, and that became a habit. And I was able to use it to my advantage when there wasn't guys on, because I can go straight into my throw from that leg kick, that initial leg kick. So it was just something that it kind of just developed into it, and it became a thing, you know, like anything else.
I just thought I'm going to replay that because this is funny. So I found that Miami one where the announcers are like talking about your
leg
set, your leg. But then also too, then there's a great clip out there where you strike out Didi, or one of the Diamondbacks. Yeah. There's a home game, but
a little Didi.
Yeah.
I faced Didi a lot, that's for sure.
Because I'm watching that and I'm like, man, how many kids, like if there's a guy on first thinking you're throwing and they're going.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, did you have
timing wise, it would mess the hitters up a little bit.
Because like, when are they starting to like?
They'll be like, oh man, it's not there, and then I got to do it again, you know. So
I don't understand the rules. So how is that not a balk? Because
I'm just picking up and coming set, right? It doesn't matter if I come set and just take a small step, or I take the leg lift.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then of course this one against Didi, I knew that I came behind Withrow that had he was my throwing partner. Like I just high-fived right now.
Yeah, that one they're saying you smoked him on the off speed.
Yeah, I just
And
threw
he
him a
just-
slider. It was a
he-
slider away, and it was painted, and I did my thing in that
We'll watch it
aspect.
one more
So,
time. It was good.
Yeah.
It was a good clip on there.
and Zanino behind the plate too. Mike Zanino was a big leaguer for a long time. So
The catcher.
yeah, Mike is really good.
Yeah.
You see how my delivery is a little bit different in college than it was in pro ball.
Was it how so?
My arm came out a little bit more consistent to a throw here, and in pro ball it was more. I had the short arm that I held up. When you look at my clips from the side, in college I didn't do it as much, but I was a lot quicker in college too.
Well, so what?
Like right here, watch my arm. Like you see how it kind of like hangs in the back.
I was going
a
to
little
say
bit?
there was a
Yeah.
little bit of a pause. I
Yeah.
didn't notice that pause, but I was wondering about that.
Yeah,
because I did.
And
notice
that
the
and that
difference.
started because the balls were so slick in pro ball that it was slipping out of my hand when I went down with it. So I started like bringing it out this way on purpose, and it just stuck with me. Yeah.
Huh.
So that's the name of it.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, dude, we're at 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's been a really fast 2 hours.
Pleasure, man.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate
Yeah.
you coming on, and it's been really good conversation.
Yeah, you already know, man.
And thanks again. Seriously, man. Thanks again for what you've done for Sean. And oh shit, you know what? I meant to show that. in the presentation view or whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
With the Aces, I feel like you've been doing a good job, and I appreciate what you're doing with the boys.
Absolutely, man. And I'm gonna keep doing it no matter what. You know. Yeah. So.
And I really hope the your work as an agent really starts to expand and does well for you. And for anyone watching out there, I'm going to put Paco's contact information. If you're interested in talking to him,
Yeah, absolutely.
From the baseball sports agent
Absolutely.
perspective, I'll get his credentials out there. So please check out the posts on the channel. And thank you for watching. And I don't know if we had anybody. I don't know if we had anyone in. We got 4 viewers on right now. I don't know if we had anyone in during the live broadcast, but if you're watching this after the fact, thank you for coming on, and we'll see you again in the future.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yep, you already know.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah, bro.
See you later. We'll go to the where's my cursor? Here we go.